you very much for having me. It's really It's delightful to talk at these kinds of events, particularly to people who are interested in becoming writers or who might be writers already and are interested in formally studying. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to look at creative writing as a subject for about half of the presentation, and then towards the end we'll talk more specifically about studying creative writing at Worcester University. But I am more than happy to answer questions generally about studying it on a sort of national level as a subject. There's my contact details at the bottom of the slide there, and there's a slide at the very end of the presentation that has all of our social media and contact details on it as well. So do feel free to get in touch with me if you do have any further questions. So without further ado, creative writing as a subject and what it means to study creative writing, which is a difficult question sometimes. In my sort of social life, my personal life, I get asked this a lot, like, how do you teach creative writing? How do you teach someone to be creative? And it's a big question, and it requires a sort of a careful answer and a thoughtful answer. So hopefully we'll go through a bit about that today, and by the end of the session you'll know what it means to study or what it means to teach it. So just a bit of I don't know, history, I suppose, and a big kind of myth busting an opportunity to really bust a myth, which is that creative writing isn't a real subject. So I've lost track of the number of times people have asked me whether creative writing is a real thing that you can study, rather than just something you do as a hobby. We often get students who have those sorts of concerns, or applicants who have those sorts of concerns about going to study something that they love. And I just want to make it very clear that it absolutely is a subject. So you've been able to study creative writing at university for decades and decades and decades, since about the 70s. But for a long time, it was creative writing paired with another subject, and that subject was most commonly English literature. So you studied English literature with creative writing. In 2008, so over 15 years ago, the UK Higher Education Quality Assurance Agency published the first benchmark statement for creative writing. So the UK Higher Education QAA, they're responsible for setting out the rules, basically, the protocol for studying a subject. They tell you, or they provide a statement that explains what you will get if you study creative writing or you study any subject at a university, the general principles that the course has to uphold, the things that you will learn, the return for your tuition fee investment. So in 2008, the creative writing had its first benchmark statement produced. You'll see there's a hyperlink in the presentation there that will take you to the current benchmark statement. So these things kind of update and update and update and respond to modern trends and what people want from the subject. So creative writing is identified as its own distinct subject. So the next time you might get into a conversation about, is it a real thing? Is it a real subject? There you go. It has been since 2008 and arguably for a lot longer. And off the back of that then, so how you might get into studying creative writing. Now, it is quite common to see creative writing on its own as a subject, as what we call a single honours degree. However, it is really common also to find it with partnered with another subject still, as a with degree or as a joint honours degree. And a joint honours degree is where you study essentially half of a subject, so two subjects alongside each other. So for example, and I'm just using Worcester here as an example. As I say, we'll talk more specifically about Worcester and about studying at Worcester a bit later. So I'm just really using this as an example of what we offer by way of partnering creative writing with other subjects. So you can study single honours creative writing at Worcester. You can also study it alongside English literature, English language, media and culture, history, illustration and screenwriting. And as I say, English literature is a very common one. So if you're looking around at loads of different universities across the country, you'll probably find creative writing paired with English literature in quite a lot of institutions. You might find English language, you might find media and culture, You may find history, that one's a little bit more uncommon, more rare, and more uncommon still, illustration or screenwriting. So Worcester's one of the few institutions in the whole country that offers illustration and creative writing as a joint honours degree, and screenwriting as well, which is, there's loads of budding screenwriters out there, loads of people who really want to write for film or for TV, for TV serial, for Netflix shows, that sort of thing. Screenwriting is a weird one. You will see some courses that offer creative writing and screenwriting whilst you're doing your UCAS searches. If you don't see screenwriting in the name of the course, don't worry. Lots of universities bundle screenwriting under creative writing. So just because it doesn't say you can study screenwriting in the course title, it doesn't mean you won't be studying screenwriting. We at the University of Worcester, we've made screenwriting its own degree because we think it's, it's really contemporary, it's really 21st century, it's really important. It's what lots of our students and applicants really want to study. So you can study it as a joint honours alongside creative writing, where you look at all the sort of other areas of writing that are in the benchmark statement: prose, poetry, fiction, novels, short stories, writing for performance. We'll come on to that in a little bit more detail though in a minute. But just to say that there are opportunities to study creative writing alongside a whole range of different subjects as well as on its own. So just to give you, I guess, a sense of, what you might be doing on a creative writing degree and why you might want to pick a creative writing degree to go on to after you've finished at school, at your A-levels, your BTECs, whatever it may be. This is a question I ask all of my students in pretty much the first session they have with me when they arrive at Worcester. I ask them why they write, and this is just a few examples of the kind of responses I get. So often we get for money, for a job, a perfectly valid and reasonable reason to write, or that chap in the bottom left hand corner, Inua Ellam's, writing for performance, writing for screen, for stage, performance poetry, which is my expertise, is in spoken word. Sometimes you might write to enter prizes, competitions, sort of get your reputation as a writer. I'm going to leave those two in the middle there and zoom up to Maya Angelou. Sometimes you write because there is a story that you want to tell, because you want to get something out into the world, because you've got a really great idea that you want to share. That picture below you might recognize if you know your romantic art. You might want to write to explore your thoughts about the world. The idea of the sort of tortured artist is quite common for creative writers, but reflecting on the world is a great reason to write. And to go back to those two in the middle there, that we get a lot of people share these sorts of feelings. So there's that kind of fuzzy picture of a head, all those thoughts bubbling around in a head. Some people write just to get those thoughts out of their heads and to make sense of them and to help them process things. And I think that's a really important reason to want to write and to want to study writing, to help you kind of get those thoughts out more clearly, more coherently. And then, of course, I don't know how many of you have a diary these days. They're sort of going out of fashion a bit with blogs and stuff, but some people just want to write for themselves, and that's okay too. The sort of writer you want to be is the sort of writer who you want to be, and a good creative writing course will help you foster that. So off the back of this, I often share like the reason I wanted to write. I studied an English literature and creative writing undergraduate degree in 2000, and you don't need to know when, a long time ago. And this quote really struck a chord with me. This is the writer Susan Sontag, and she says, "What I really wanted was every kind of life, and the writer's life seemed the most inclusive." And it's kind of, you kind of got to suspend your disbelief here and imagine it. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pirate, an astronaut, and a potato, I think, in that order. And Susan Sontag's quote, so I've long since reconciled myself to the fact that I will not be any of those things. Definitely not a potato. Susan Sontag's like point here is that, yeah, you might not be able to be an astronaut or a pirate or a spaceman or a elf, whatever it might be, but as a writer you can get as close to those different things as possible. As a writer, the writer's life is the most inclusive. As a writer, you can pretend to be those things for a day. You can convince your reader that you are those things, and that's something that really like moves me as a writer. That's why I want to write. And also this quote here, that I have partnered with a very lovely photograph of Worcester Cathedral, which I walked past on my way to work. And this is a quote by Orson Scott, the writer Orson Scott. Everybody walks past 1,000 story ideas every day. The good writers are the ones who see 5 or maybe 6 of them. Most people don't see any. So writing can be a way to understand the world and a way to look at the world differently, to look at the world slant, as the poet Emily Dickinson says, to kind of process the world in a slightly different way. And that's if that strikes a chord with you, that's something you do when you look around the world and you see things that maybe you don't think other people see, not spooky things like ghosts, but like that you see opportunities or stories, that's showing that you have a writer kind of inside you that is trying to come out. So to sort of put all that slightly aspirational, philosophical things together, these are the sorts of things that studying creative writing at a university, any university, these are the sorts of things that we use to help you kind of learn to be a creative writer. And I'm not going to trash any STEM subject courses or anything like that, not at all. But obviously studying creative writing is different from studying to become a chartered accountant or studying to become an engineer or a chemist or a biologist. When you are studying to become a writer, you aren't learning a set of things that you need to know, like a doctor might or a dentist might. You are learning something about yourself and your aspirations, what you want, the sort of writer you want to be, is front and center of learning, studying creative writing. So again, creative writing courses, wherever they may be, they first help you identify what sort of writer you want to be and then help you become that. And the ways that we might do that as teachers of creative writing: reading, introducing you to so much reading, lots of reading, encouraging you to read widely, but also to consume culture. So it certainly used to be the case that you only read novels or you only read poetry, and that's how you become a better writer. You know, in the 21st century, we know that the way we consume stories is changing. And sometimes it's novels, sometimes it's TV series, sometimes it's video games, sometimes it's YouTube vlogs, whatever it might be. Learning to write for lots of different content, to write narrative and story and culture for loads of different people with loads of different audiences with loads of different styles, that's really important. So we encourage you to watch films, to play video games, to listen to audiobooks, podcasts, as well as reading. Whatever it might be, comic books, you know, graphic novels, whatever it might be that gets you culture and gets you engaged with narrative in different ways, we encourage that. We also like critical analysis, of course. So every time you do watch a film or read a book or listen to a podcast, we want you to be thinking critically about it with your writer's hat on, thinking about what narrative is. We want you to be reflecting on your own writing. And that's not just at the end of it looking at it and thinking, these are the metaphors I've used, this is the sentence structure I've used. It's thinking about the process as well. I always tell all of my students that 90% of the writing isn't on the page or typing or pen to paper. That's only 10% of writing, the actual physical act of it. 90% of it is happening in your head. So even if you feel like you're not writing all the time, of course you're not, because if you're writing all the time, that would be it would give you RSI from the amount of typing you'd have to do. When you're sort of wandering down the street or sitting on the sofa and thinking about a story, part of that process is writing. And part of that, and thinking about that processing and working out what we can learn from it, is something really important for creative writing students. We also want you to listen to feedback. Of course, a key part of any writing degree is a one-to-one with a professional writer, or one-to-one or group work with your peers who are learning just as much as you are. Another important part of the feedback process is giving it. So not just being sensitive and listening to it and taking it on board, but learning how to give feedback teaches you so much about writing. Looking at someone else's work and thinking, okay, I think this is where they're going wrong, will be teaching you things about your own work. And of course, that listening and giving feedback part involves sharing your writing. And this is, one of the biggest fears we encounter with our first year students, first year, second year, or third year students, is that confidence to share your work. And that might be the thing that is maybe in the back of your mind, the off-putting thing about studying creative writing, the thought that it is quite exposing, and it takes some bravery to actually share your work. We encourage that gently. We don't chuck you in at the deep end. We give you strategies and help to build up that confidence to share your work. You might have that anyway. You might share your work now. You might be comfortable with that. Lots of students aren't, but don't worry. Creative writing as a subject is about building that confidence. And alongside confidence and bravery, and exposing yourself to people's feedback and people's critique, going outside your comfort zone with your writing, taking risks with your writing, doing styles or practicing styles or trying out styles that you're not familiar with. You might think, okay, I'm a novelist. That's all I want to write. I'm not interested in poetry. Most courses will make you do a little bit of poetry, and that is not a problem. In fact, that's a good thing. Going outside of your comfort zone teaches you to be a better writer. Taking risks teaches you to be a better writer. Trial and error. That building up that resilience is really important as a student of creative writing, knowing that you might write something and it's just no good, and you can't think of a way to salvage it, and you just want to start again. And that can be really deflating, like you've written a 2,000-word short story and actually it's not working. You need to rewrite it. You think, oh no, I've just wasted all that time. Writing anything is never a waste. The thing that you produce after that 2,000-word short story will be phenomenally better for you having done that and worked out what wasn't working. And that sounds tedious and frustrating and dull and etc. But having fun is, of course, a huge part of being a student of creative writing. I'm not going to sit here and say it's more fun than any other subject at university. That's my personal opinion, but I'm a bit biased. Studying creative writing is meant to be enjoyable, and lots of times we sort of feel uncomfortable about studying something that is fun and that we enjoy, and that is not a problem. You might think, okay, it's not serious enough because I'm enjoying it, or this is something I enjoy, this is something I like doing in my spare time, therefore it's not a serious subject. That's absolutely not true. You will have a much better time at university if you are doing something that is fun, that you enjoy. You will get so much more value out of it, professionally, personally, developmentally, if you're enjoying what you're doing. So don't feel guilty about having fun studying. Working collaboratively, I'll come on in a minute to the sort of skills that we embed in graduates, and working collaboratively, teamwork is a really big part of it. But just again, to bust a myth that writing is all about locking yourself away in your little room and writing in a really solitary, isolated way. That might be the sort of cliche of writers historically, but actually today's sort of writers don't write like that. Particularly if you're going into an industry like screenwriting, you are going to be working collaboratively as a writer. And that last one, again, these transferable skills that I'm sure you've heard that buzzword before. Writing is being a professional writer, being a full-time writer, it's really important that you can manage your time effectively, and studying a creative writing course teaches you that. Being the best writers have a writing routine, and that routine is not set in sort of horrible stone. I have lots of friends, writers, colleagues, writers who don't wake up at 5 o'clock and write for 5 hours and then get on with their day. Some people sort of try and find the creativity when it strikes them, trying to kind of make sure that their writing routine fits their creativity. Will help you kind of work that out. That's part of what we do as an undergraduate on a creative writing course, to help you get in control of that routine. Just a brief sort of note, I suppose, on the sort of teaching activities you would expect at any university studying creative writing. You might get lectures in the sort of traditional park and bark style. You'll have someone up at the front telling you about a book or a style of writing or a general theme or genre. You will then have workshops and seminar discussions, and these two things are really key parts, particularly workshops, of any creative writing course in the UK. Writing workshops where you are sharing work, you're listening to people, you're reading their work, you're feeding back. Similarly, with seminar discussions, you might be talking about the book that you've read for that week with your writer's hat on. You might be discussing the writing exercise or responding to a task that's been set by the lecturer, leading on to writing exercises. You will have weekly writing exercises on most courses in the UK, and that's a lot of writing. They're there for you to interpret and use as you wish, though. It's never prescriptive. As long as you are writing, you are responding to the writing exercise. Digital skills, as I alluded to, we're in the 21st century now. It's not all print culture. We are helping students, particularly at Worcester, to develop digital skills, content writing, digital marketing skills, for that sort of anyone with those sorts of career aspirations. Your teaching activities are also supported by, so not only will you have a core team of professional writers and critical thinkers, but you'll also have guest speakers brought in. You might have master classes, so very specific. So it's specific from a writer coming in and talking about their writing practice. You might have an industry professional coming in and giving you a masterclass on content writing or proofreading or writing for a particular field or profession. And of course, sort of extracurricular things like trips, writing exercises, events that take you outside of the classroom and help you to kind of think about writing again as something that's out in the world rather than just in the classroom. Just a quick note then, because I'm starting to talk here about professional skills and professional identities, and again, a big fear, I suppose, a big question that I guess get asked a lot by students, parents, etc., applicants, is what career can I get with creative writing? Because if you think about applying to be a chartered accountant, for example, I keep using that example. If you apply for a degree in chartered accounting, you're going to become a chartered accountant, probably. If you apply for a degree in dentistry, you're likely to become a dentist. There's that kind of one route into a profession that lots of undergraduate degrees offer. And creative writing doesn't quite feel like that. It is quite vocational for a humanities degree because you study creative writing to become a writer. There's a clear line there, and lots of students do become professional writers. They do build up their portfolio of work. But it is, again, I'm a little biased here. I would say creative writing is one of the most flexible degrees you can do, certainly in humanities and arts, because not only can you become a writer out of it, a professional writer, but you might want to go into marketing, content creation. You can see the slide there. I'm not going to read all of them. Editing, screenwriter, publishing, any comms, marketing jobs, whether that's digital or non-digital, event planning. You might want to go into journalism, so different styles of writing. Pretty much every company in the world, it relies on a story, whether that's a narrative, a story about why you should buy the product, why you should use the service, why you should donate money to them. Any organization relies on telling a story successfully. So writers are really important to pretty much any company. You need someone who understands how to get into people's heads with a story or an idea and get it really to sit there and work for them. So writing, can fit into all sorts of different professions and industries. And those last two there in that third column, teaching and further postgraduate study. So lots of writing, creative writers, graduates might go into teaching or might go into further postgraduate study, do an MA in writing or another professional degree in writing. So there's lots of opportunities, and an ever expanding kind of field of opportunities, because the more and more different types of culture are developed, the more need there will be for clever, sophisticated, well-taught 21st century writers. So if you think for things like the multiverse, VR, there is going to be a big boom in narratives for the multiverse, or the metaverse, the multiverse. The writers are required for the multiverse, the Marvel multiverse. I think they've got quite a few writers already, but for the metaverse, for telling kind of augmented reality narratives, that's a huge industry that writers are going into. And right in the center there, video game design. I believe in 2020, the video game industry overtook the publishing industry as the biggest recruiter of graduates of American creative writing degrees, or MFAs, Masters of Fine Art. So it's a huge industry. So if you're interested in video games, creative writing will fit quite neatly into that, as an example. So as mentioned, you probably hear these words like transferable skills bandied around a lot when you're thinking about applying for university, or you're looking at the marketing from university courses. And I'm going to try and demystify them as best I can using the University of Worcester's 5 graduate attributes. So all universities have come up with something quite similar to this, the key attributes that they want from their graduates. And I'm going to show you how creative writing as a subject maps onto Worcester's. And this is Worcester specific, but they'll be fairly similar across any university that you might want to apply to. So graduates of the university, we want them to have social responsibility. And as a creative writing graduate, if you become a professional writer, you have a local, a national, sometimes an international, a global social responsibility to make sure your writing's culturally aware, that it's sensitive to any issues that are affecting readers in the 21st century. So big conversations around representation in writing. What sort of characters can you represent? What sort of stories can you tell? These are questions we embed at Worcester. These are questions that are embedded in any creative writing course. Our second graduate attribute, we want our graduates not only to learn for 3 years and then just drop studying for the rest of their lives. We want them to become reflective, resilient learners for the rest of their life. And this fits really nicely into writing, because you don't just study creative writing for 3 years and then you never write again once you've graduated, hopefully. Writing is a thing that you will do. If you have a passion for it, you will do it for the rest of your life. And creative writing courses are about embedding those skills in this really intense 3-year period that you can use for the rest of your life to structure your writing, to help you with your writing. Graduate attribute 3, problem solving. These are where these transferable skills start to creep in. So companies, professional industries, employers will always look for people who can problem solve, people who are creative thinkers. And creative writers are creative thinkers. Lots of problem solving is done in the writing process. A huge part of what writers do is trying to fix problems, whether that's plot points, consistency, whether that's working within a form or a genre and making the story fit into it. Experimenting with your writing, thinking outside the box is key to that. That extra sort of gold dust that lots of companies look for of creative thinkers, people who can think more big picture as well as zoom in on the details. That's something that writing teaches you, that ability to look at both and to find a unique, creative way to solve a problem. For teamwork, effective communication, of course, a big transferable skill for any employer. They want their employers to be able to work as a team, to be independent thinkers, but to be able to work as a team. Creative writing is about working as a team. As I say, lots of your writing will be done independently, but lots of the improvement, the learning, is done through workshops. It's also done, the communication part is also embedded, so moving between different genres or forms, learning how to write a novel, learning how to write a screenplay, that's learning different communication styles, written, oral. We encourage students to work together and to communicate effectively, to learn how to respond to different audiences and different styles. So again, assessments, writing exercises, workshops. And finally, a big thing in the sort of any university's current graduate attributes is digital citizenship. Understanding that digital communication, digital media is embedded, sutured into the fabric, the DNA of society. And actually, writers are not just writing for print publication anymore. They're writing for digital media. They're writing for content, digital content, social media content. They're writing media that is consumed through a screen rather than through a page. And if you will, on any creative writing course, get the page stuff, get writing a novel that will be printed and bound and sold in Waterstones, but you will also get sessions that are focused, or modules that are focused on building those digital capabilities. So, for example, I'm just this morning taught a module called Hypermedia, where students have to create an interactive narrative, like a choose your own adventure, a sort of video game, like text-based video game, and submit it for their assessment. And I think they're having a hoot. They seem to be having a whale of a time, hopefully. Again, collaborative digital skills, big transferable skills for professional industries, for employers. So I think that's running a little fast. I am talking very fast as well, though, so you will have this presentation available afterwards to peruse at your leisure. So I'm just going to run through a few slides about studying specifically at Worcester and try and bring in some of these big ideas, put them in some context. So as I've mentioned, you can study single honours creative writing, you can study joint honours with a range of options. So they're on the screen: English literature, English language, history, illustration, screenwriting, media and culture. And we're all about looking at different writing styles, looking at different platforms, modes of writing, genres that are relevant to how people consume stories in the contemporary world. You'll be learning from creative writers such as myself, a colleague. We have a core team of about 3 or 4 or 5 writers who will be teaching you, who are all professional writers, but also researchers, experts in their field. So mine is spoken word and contemporary poetics. We have experts in writing memoir, historical fiction, environmental writing, more experimental digital poetry. And you get to kind of learn these different approaches to writing. There's just a few pictures there of some of our students studying in various different places in the university. As a sort of a snapshot, I guess, of what happens across the 3 years, and this will be very relevant to any course that you apply to as a creative writing student, I would imagine. The sort of the spine of it, the bones of it. In the first year, we throw lots of spaghetti at the wall and we see what sticks. We introduce you to loads of different styles, and if you don't gel with them, if you don't gel with some of them, that's absolutely fine. It's about exposing you to loads of different ways of thinking about writing and giving you the fundamentals of how do we workshop a piece, how do we edit a piece, how might we prepare a piece to submit to a competition or a magazine, or some sort of publishing opportunity. As you progress across your 3 years, as you go into your second year and your third year, you'll find that any course in the country, you'll start to sort of narrow down. You'll get a range of optional modules, and you get a lot more choice about whether you want to be a fiction writer, a poet, whether you want to look at specific types of writing, non-fiction, digital writing, writing for performance. And to a greater or lesser degree, you'll be able to tailor that to suit you. So certainly at the University of Worcester, you'll do some, as a poet, I always use poetry as the example here. Lots of our students love poetry, but as an example, if you don't get on with poetry at all in the first year, you can avoid the poetry modules as you move through the second and the third year. If you don't like writing non-fiction, you can avoid the non-fiction modules. As mentioned, all of these kind of specialisms are within the field of the writers we have available to teach at the University of Worcester. And we also have lots and lots of extracurricular stuff that we put on. I'll go into a bit of detail in a couple of slides time, but it's not just classroom contact hours, it's not just lectures and workshops. You get visits from writers and professionals, industry professionals, and you get social events to help you build and develop your writers network and think about starting to turn your work towards publication in whatever form that is. So again, teaching much as I mentioned earlier, the sort of teaching activities. So there are lectures, there are seminars, there are writing workshops. You get the opportunity to do lots of one-to-one supervision. So it's not just group work. You do get one-to-one tutorials with your tutors. We might do some digital blended learning to develop those digital skills. We might think about setting up your own writer's blog and give you some help with that, so you can get your shop window out there, start getting your work out. Sometimes we involve group projects, sometimes, as I say, we involve guest speakers. And it's not just sitting at the desk, sitting in your tables, listening to lectures. So this picture here, where all of my students, you can see, are looking thrilled to be doing this, and they did have a really great time. This is a poetry and poetics workshop. This is a poetry form called the sestina, which is alternating stanzas of 6 lines. And as far as we can, we try and make sure that you're not just sitting down listening for 3 hours. You are getting up, you are doing practical exercises, you are doing group work. We might leave the classroom to do a writing exercise. We try and make it as interactive as possible. A note that again on the sort of guest writers and master classes. So you have lots of opportunity to learn from us, from the core team at Worcester, but you'd also get lots of opportunities to talk to specialists and industry experts. So this is Luke Kennard on the left, who's a great friend of the course, Forward Prize winning poet Luke Kennard, who is delivering a poetry workshop. Roy McFarlane, another Birmingham-based poet and novelist, I think he's also writing fiction, came to deliver a really fantastic reading of his work. And on the right there, Raven Brooks, who was a graduate of the course from quite a while ago, who went on to work for a marketing agency, DRPG, was giving a masterclass on content writing. And actually, one of the students who attended the masterclass caught Raven's eye, and Raven offered them a job at the company as a result of the masterclass. So it's really important that you do go to these events for networking opportunities. Whatever university you are at, I really encourage you to take full advantage of everything they're offering, because it might change your life. Your community at Worcester, so we really encourage all of the year groups to mix together. This is just one of our events where we had a book launch. It's a vibrant community. There's lots of clubs. There's a poetry club, there's a poetry society, a writing society. We have loads of specialist series that the School of Humanities and my department, the Department of English Media and Culture, put on. So the creative writing course have a guest speaker series. We have at least one writer professional a month come in to speak to you, which is an event that's open to the public as well. We have our School of Humanities research seminar series, which is your opportunity to hear what your lecturers are doing, their professional research. And we also have the Untitled Open Mic Night, which is all for you. Some of your lecturers might come and read a poem or two or read a short story or two, but it is an open mic night for you to share your work. in a slightly less formal setting than the classroom. So we'll go to a space and read some work, and then it might be a trip to the pub. That's once a month as well. We called it the Untitled Open Mic Night because no one could come up with a better name, which is tragic for a creative writing course, that's the most creative name we could think of, but it's kind of stuck now. And also lots of space. We always encourage you to develop your own writing groups, to not just be writing in the classroom. We'll support you with resources or space to help you develop projects. Just a few pictures of some of our graduating students we're very proud of. We have opportunities every year to kind of really celebrate our graduates, and it's, you know, the highlight of our year, really, seeing our students succeed, go on to really great things. And as a testimonial, this is a graduate from last year. So they graduated in the summer to November of 2021. And this is a quote from them. This is the Unislam team up there. I caught them mid-enjoyment of a joke, and it's one of my favourite photos I've ever taken of our students because there's just so much joy in the photo. Choosing the creative, my Teams window is covering half of the quote. Choosing the creative writing course at the Worcester University was one of the best decisions I ever made. The lectures are informative and fun. I can't read that. The other something wonderful and supportive. The lectures are unparalleled in their something investment and care they take with their students. It's truly remarkable. A really lovely thing for them to say. You might be able to see the full quote on that screen there, which is, you know, a lovely testimonial to hear from our students. So that is the end of, just about running on time. That is the end of my part of the session, but I'm really happy to open up to some questions. Just to explain this slide, though, this is the publications that our students have gone on to publish after they graduated from the course, and these are just publications from the last 3 or 4 years, I think. I think the earliest one there is about 4 years ago. So our students, we're really proud of them. They go on to actually publish their work. So you get a lot of courses that say, oh, you know, we guarantee we'll get you published, or that's the aim, that they're going to get you published. We're really proud of all of the work our graduates do, whether they get published or not, whether they go on to different forms of creative writing. But we're super duper proud of our students who really continue with their writing and go on to real professional success. So here's just a few examples of some of the covers of some of the books that some of our students have come up with. And I'm going to stop presenting for the Q&A so I can see my Teams window, but I just thought I'd leave this on the end of the slide. And again, the session's recorded, so you can check this out at your leisure, but that at the top there is our blog for our creative writing course. Do check it out for the sort of up-to-date stuff that we're doing. We have a Twitter handle, Instagram. We have a YouTube channel with some examples of exercises, writing exercises you might want to check out. It's me narrating, so if you want to fall asleep to listening to me talk about a writing exercise, you go ahead. There's my email and my colleague Ruth Stacey, who is the admissions tutor, and some contact details for our admissions office. So I'm going to stop presenting and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much. That's been so comprehensive and so enjoyable. I hope the students have thoroughly enjoyed that, and I know that when we circulate that, our curriculum teaching staff will be presenting that to their students too. So thank you. If there are any questions directly from students, please do type them in the chat box. But meanwhile, before any of those come through or not, depending on how quiet they all are, we have some questions that were asked in advance. So it would be lovely if I could just ask 2 or 3 questions, if I may.
Yep.
One of the questions that a student asked was, if not doing English literature or language, can someone still find a way into this career path? And I guess that's quite an interesting and logical question, but perhaps you could kind of embellish on that a little.
So if they're not studying currently at A-level in English language or
That's
literature,
right.
that's a really good question. Most, and I'll try and speak nationally about it rather than just Worcester, so that the student has a full picture. Though I'll start with Worcester. At Worcester, we don't require an A-level in what we call a cognate subject like English literature or English language. We are happy to take applications from people with non-standard educational backgrounds, and I would say that is true for most of the sector. You will sometimes be required to submit a writing sample alongside an application if you don't meet the subject requirement. But that's a really kind of powerful part of your application. So as long as you can prove that you write and that you have a decent kind of standard of writing and that you're passionate about your writing, lots of universities will overlook any subject specific requirements. But it's always worth asking the university.
That's really helpful, and I guess there are a lot of creative people who may not necessarily have studied those subjects, but may have a very good creative sort of bent in their armoury. Also, you talked about the variety of different methods of learning and teaching within the course at Worcester and probably generically across most universities. But what size of classes do creative writing tend to have? Bearing in mind, I guess, that it's slightly different and can be more personally focused than some subjects.
Typically, I mean, it does vary nationally, depending on the general size of the institution. But typically, you would be looking, I would say, at around 30 to 40 in a cohort, usually. That's because creative writing, it's so important that you form those personal relationships with your tutors, but with your kind of cohort as well. You need that more intimate size of a cohort. It's not a lecture where you have 200 people and you're just lecturing to them. We try and get to know every single one of our students personally, what they like, what they don't like, how they write, what they want to be as a writer. I know some universities, bigger universities, Birmingham, Manchester, might have bigger cohorts, but I would peg it at around 30 to 40.
That's really helpful. And I guess in the classes that varies in workshop mode or whether it's a lecture mode as to how many per member of staff or that is an operational sort of side of things.
Yes, and certainly when you start going into your second and third year and you get to choose optional modules, it will depend on how many students have picked the module, and that will dictate class sizes. So you might get more like 10 than 30 on a class.
That's grand, thank you. And how is the work for the course set out? Are there exams or is it more coursework? And that's always something I think very significant to some students more than others.
That is the question I think I get asked most at open days. Are there exams? There are no exams at the University of Worcester. It is all coursework based or presentation based. I know some universities have exams in their creative writing / broader humanities award map, but they are sort of being phased out for more vocational subjects like creative writing, and you will get them replaced with a much broader portfolio of things that you're assessed by. So it's an essay or a writing sample or a portfolio, or it might be an outline or a pitch for a novel rather than the novel itself or the first few chapters of a novel. It might be writing the pitch for it, and also things like oral presentation and start to be assessed, so reading your work out loud or writing a piece for performance.
Lovely. And not a question that students have asked, but one that comes to mind from myself, and that's about preparation for applying and obviously taking part in a course such as the creative writing. You talked about so many strands of, in some ways, preparing and reading widely and experiencing and thinking about things a little differently in terms of creative narrative in different settings. can you sort of suggest how students might prepare for a course like this?
Read and consume and think about all the different things that they're doing in their spare time culturally, to sort of wind down. Video games, podcasts, as I mentioned, watching films, watching TV, and reading. Start thinking about narrative and about how this piece of writing is put together, how dialogue's being written, and the structure of a story is. Start looking at the world with a sort of writer's hat on. In terms of the actual application, never be afraid to email the course team, because they will want to hear from applicants. They will want to get to know you. It's always nice if your name is then recognised by the admissions tutor, and have a writing sample in your back pocket, because you might get asked for one.
Thank you. And I think the open days that you have at Worcester, certainly I'd encourage students to go and have a look and come along and meet yourself and your colleagues and talk to you, and experience perhaps other universities as well, to make some comparisons of courses to see where students fit in. I'm particularly familiar with Worcester, of course, myself, but I think that it's worth for students to be encouraged to go along and, as you say, talk to lecturers and admissions and the outreach people as well, so that they have as much information as possible before making those choices about where they go and what course they study.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And interestingly, just as you were talking, I was thinking about the number of stories. It'd be interesting for students, perhaps in a day, maybe tomorrow, to think about how many narratives they come across during a day, whether that's in reading manga, or whether it's looking at the BBC website with a war correspondent. However that creativity is interpreted in different formats and different spheres of a day. It's quite an interesting exercise. I was trying to think of that as you were talking. So I'm sure students will be very enthused by your talk today, and the resilience and some of the characteristics that you suggested are commensurate with joining a course like the creative writing. I'm hoping that students will see that through work experience, through wider reading, through experiencing and walking through a door when it's open, or pushing the door open and walking through it, it is worth all of those extra experiences.
Yep.
Thank you very much indeed. Jane has been busily putting up lots of different links. We have a link to your own sort of work and website, and we also have links to Worcester University, and also to do with prospects, particularly there, a good website to see what you can do with degrees, in addition to some of those obviously career focused slides that you put up in your presentation. So thank you very much indeed, and we look forward hopefully to working with you in the future, and obviously passing on this information to other students too.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. All the very best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.